future options in this industry.
Right.
But there's another big hurdle, and Mr. Srivastav, I come to you for that. Between the farm gate and the consumer link, there is one challenge, there's one hurdle which is often talked about, which is the selfish interest of private enterprises. How much do you agree with this, and what kind of a role do we see the enterprises playing, and do you feel there's a need to regulate it?
Regulation has been proved to be ineffective because this sector has always seen regulation. Private sector exploitation, you call it, or the way in which the system works today as it is, the farmers do not get their fair share, is there for us. How do we bring in effectiveness into this? Market institutions play a big role in this, whether it is primary markets or there are national level markets, what we are talking about, or the terminal markets, what we talk about. So those play a very, very important role, because those new institutions are supposed to bring in what is missing in the current system, which is the transparency. Whether it is in the transparency in the process in which the goods are negotiated between the buyer and the seller, or the price setting process. So there is a lot more room there in setting the transparent process, and that's where the system should take the next step forward. The market reform should take next step forward. Again, there are also issues like if a person is bringing a small quantity of produce, it's very difficult to get a fair price. That's what is a market has been always. It's been very mean. But if I have a sizable produce, how do I make it sizable? I can form a coalition. I can aggregate the produce at the farmers level. And that's where Maharashtra has shown the way. The cooperative movements have shown the way. How do we collectivize the farmers' produce? And through a cooperative mechanism, we can aggregate and sell. And therefore, we can also, a seller can increase their bargaining power. There are methods in which we can do that one, not as an individual, but through a collective mechanism. There are very good examples in this country where these issues have been addressed fairly, and those examples have to be shared with all the people so that there is enough room for learning from within the system.
So learning, awareness, again the thrust, but it's not like private sector enterprises haven't done much. A lot has been done to empower the farmer. We're talking about projects like the Project Shakti or E-Chopals. But if we keep these two in context, what kind of long-term realistic goals are we talking about?
Before I go to that, I would like to add to what Professor Gandhi said.
Sure.
Excuse me, and Mr. Srivastav said. One is, you asked him about is there a scope for producing enough so that we can fulfill our demands as well as export. If you look at, we had the first green revolution in 1960s and 70s. Our food production almost trebled. We became self-sufficient. But even now, if you look at the productivity levels and compare it with our competitors like China, China has doubled the productivity of ours, for example, in wheat and paddy, and many more things. So, there is still a scope for second green revolution on which our scientists are working very intently, and I think the next green revolution is just around the corner.
What kind of timeline are we looking at? That's a very important point.
I think, within the next 5 years or so, we'll see a second green revolution coming up. And that will be again boosting our agricultural production to great heights, which will be not only enough to serve our,
But do we see it for good, Mr. Kumar? Because then again, we did see a green revolution, and then again, it went away. So do we see this time it coming and actually showing good results and a permanent result?
You see, I would not say, Ratna, I wouldn't agree to the point that it went away. Green revolution had its positive impact. As I said, trebling your food production was not an easy task in a country like ours, where the agriculture was primitive. But at the same time, because we were not able to contain our population, so the demand has now, taken over.
It's a positive memory, no doubt, but are we looking at a positive constant?
Yes, we are. Because as I said, in the next 5 years, when you see the second green revolution, you will find that the production again goes up. It takes a big, huge quantum jump. And then we'll have enough to not only feed ourselves in the domestic environment, plus export also.
So taking from this discussion, we'll pause it for a moment, and awareness does seem to be the key. We will be talking about that after a very short break. Stay with us. How much of a hurdle is the red tape as far as the private sector's functioning is concerned?
Today there is no red tape, I believe, the red tapes are
you
coming
feel that
outside.
government is completely supportive of
In
everything?
fact, especially the Ministry of Food Processing, in every forum they come and ask the people, you give us ideas, how do we grow the sector? So that's openness, because the country realizes the potential of this particular sector. So it's basically like, for the private sector people to take initiatives.
So you're getting complete government support?
Absolutely, like, in fact, like, if you look at the agriculture and the agribusiness area, the largest investment allocation, like the National Horticultural Mission for the 11th five-year plan, the kind of allocation and the areas in which they are planning to invest, basically, like, that itself, like, there is an openness in the entire process. And also, like, wherever on the farmer side, if there are any imbalances, there are some mispricing issues and other things.
So we saw the same formula, the public-private partnership formula, working for the infrastructure sector. So can we expect the same kind of success in the agribusiness sector? Your comment first.
Yes. As I said, it has to be the private and the public investors will have to go hand in hand. The government, because the private sector is not in a position to invest in remote rural areas for creating, as I said, the primary processing centers or the cold chain, the government has started investing in these areas, in the rural areas, but the part of the agribusiness which lies in little above that, which is, let's say, in smaller towns and bigger towns or metropolitan areas, part of the cold chain, the private sector needs to come in. The private sector is coming in a big way. For example, we have a scheme of financing cold chain where we give assistance of 10 crores. And we have a large number of applications coming in that people want to invest in that, create a cold chain and serve the farmer. That is one. We have a scheme, as I mentioned, mega food park, where people are coming in with huge investments of 350 to 400 crores for each mega food park, where government is giving 50 crores, and 10 of our projects are ready to be launched. In similar ways, laboratory has been a major sort of limiting factor. We have not been able to get our food or the quality tested. So we are now establishing 84 laboratories of international standards all over the country with government funding.
All right.
Yeah. Similarly, we are funding huge research projects to private sector as well as the public institutions like universities, research institutions, for taking up research for developing new products, new technologies, new things. I mean, as I say, for the primary processing centers in the rural areas, it's a big challenge to develop an energy source which will run the cold chain there. Because as you know, all of us know that, the availability of power, leave aside quality power, is an issue there. So that's a big area of research.
So there are challenges, but a lot is still happening. Let's take a look at the number of players. The sector is immensely fragmented, Professor. So do we see the presence of so many small players as a positive thing?
I think it's positive in some ways, but it works against the scale that is required for modernization at times. The scale that we require is not the same kind of scale as Western countries have, which have a very different resource endowment.
Exactly.
They have much less labor, much more capital, and therefore that kind of scale. But there are several other Asian countries that are having similar kind of basis of assets and resources. And it would be kind of similar to that. So that means what we require is a scale that can work with small farmers, because we are going to continue to be a small farming setup in terms of production.
So the right kind of scale is needed. Mr. Srivastava, if we talk about the young entrepreneurs, the sudden emergence of the young people in this field, so they seem to be actually making the sector head in a very right direction.
Yeah, but I have to caution you that agribusiness, we have seen many failures, because there are many models which they are trying to replicate what is done elsewhere. But in India, the agribusiness context is different, and you have a huge opportunity, but these opportunities can be region specific. It's not that every opportunity is a national level opportunity. So while we think of scale, we need to also consider those kinds